Okay, so you want to own a lower league football club, a proud old ground, a few thousand loyal fans who've supported this team for generations, a modest budget compared to the Premier League giants, and a realistic path to building something up, maybe even chasing promotion one day. That's the picture in your head, and it's the picture that's lured wealthy businessmen into buying small football clubs for over a century. Walk into that stadium on a Saturday afternoon, terraces full, chanting echoing off the stands, and it looks like a real, functioning business with thousands of paying customers walking through the gate. Here's the problem. You are looking at the 90 minutes of the week that lies to you the most. The truth is that a lower league football club is not really a sports business. It is a community institution that behaves like a business, and the moment you understand that distinction, everything about how these clubs survive, and how so many of them nearly don't, starts to make sense. Let's start with what it actually costs to buy one of these clubs, because the purchase price is almost never the real number that matters. Lower league clubs, especially in England's National League and lower divisions, or equivalent semi-professional tiers in other countries, can often be bought for surprisingly little, sometimes anywhere from £500,000 to £5 million, depending on the level, the state of the stadium, and how much debt is already sitting on the books. Compare that to a Premier League club, which can trade hands for hundreds of millions or billions, and it looks like a bargain. But that low purchase price is exactly the trap, because it tells you almost nothing about what it costs to actually run the thing once you own it. Most lower league clubs don't generate anywhere near enough revenue from matchday income alone to cover their operating costs, and that gap has to be filled by the owner every single season just to keep the lights on. Here's the number that catches almost every new owner off guard: player wages. Even at semi-professional and lower professional levels, wage bills routinely consume 60 to 90% of a club's entire annual revenue, sometimes exceeding it entirely. A club playing in England's 5th or 6th tier might have an annual wage bill of £500,000 to £1.5 million, while its total matchday and commercial revenue combined might only bring in £300,000 to £800,000. That gap, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds a season, doesn't disappear. It becomes a direct cash injection the owner has to make, year after year, just to field a competitive team. And here's the trap within the trap. The moment you stop making that injection to save money, results on the pitch usually get worse, which shrinks attendance further, which shrinks revenue further, which makes the gap even harder to close the following season. Many lower league owners describe this dynamic the same way. You're not really buying a football club, you're signing up for an annual subscription with no fixed price and no cancellation option, because walking away from a club mid-season, leaving players unpaid and a community devastated, carries reputational and sometimes legal consequences that most owners aren't willing to face. Now let's talk about where the actual revenue comes from, because it's a lot more fragmented and fragile than people assume. Matchday revenue, ticket sales, concessions, program sales, is often the smallest reliable piece of the puzzle at this level. A club averaging 2,000 to 4,000 fans a match, at ticket prices typically ranging from £10 to £25, might generate only £20,000 to £60,000 in gate revenue on a good match day, and lower league seasons only have around 23 home league matches a year. Doing the math across a full season and matchday income alone often lands somewhere between £500,000 and £1.5 million at best for a well-supported club at this level, nowhere near enough to cover wages on its own, let alone stadium maintenance, staffing, travel, and youth development costs. The next piece is sponsorship and commercial revenue: shirt sponsors, stadium naming rights, hospitality boxes, local business advertising boards around the pitch. At this level, these deals are genuinely modest. A shirt sponsorship might bring in £20,000 to £100,000 a season, and hospitality packages for local businesses wanting to entertain clients on match day might add another £50,000 to £150,000. It's real money, but it's a fraction of what a top-flight club generates from a single global sponsorship deal. Broadcasting revenue, the enormous river of money that funds Premier League and top European clubs, is nearly non-existent at lower league level. There's no meaningful national television deal distributing tens of millions of pounds to a fifth-tier club. Whatever streaming or local broadcast deals exist at this level generate what amounts to rounding error revenue compared to the wage bill. This is where the real financial lifeline for most lower league clubs actually comes from, and it's the one that isn't advertised on the club crest: player trading. Selling a promising young player to a bigger club, sometimes for a fee that dwarfs the club's entire annual budget, is often the single most important revenue event in a lower league club's multi-year financial history. An academy graduate or a standout lower league player sold to a championship or Premier League club can bring in anywhere from £250,000 to several million pounds in a single transfer, sometimes with a sell-on clause attached that pays the selling club a percentage if that player is later resold for even more. This is why lower league clubs, even ones with modest budgets, invest heavily in youth academies and scouting networks despite the upfront cost, because unearthing and developing one genuinely talented young player and selling them on can single-handedly fund 2 or 3 years of operating losses. It's a lottery ticket business layered on top of a subscription business. Most seasons, you're funding the gap out of pocket. Every few years, if you're good at recruitment and development, you might hit a transfer fee that changes the club's entire financial trajectory for a period. Now, here's the part of the business that actually explains why owners keep doing this, despite the numbers looking rough on paper every single year. Promotion. The financial jump between divisions in a football pyramid is not gradual. It's a cliff. Moving up even one tier can multiply a club's revenue several times over, through higher attendances, richer sponsorship deals, and in some pyramids, a share of television revenue that simply doesn't exist at the level below. In England specifically, the jump from the National League into League Two, the bottom rung of the Professional Football League, unlocks a meaningful increase in central broadcasting distribution payments that non-league clubs don't receive at all. And the jump from the Championship into the Premier League is famously the single most valuable promotion in world football, worth well over £100 million in the first season alone through broadcasting revenue, prize money, and parachute payments if the club is later relegated. Owners at the lower league level aren't running the club purely as a going concern generating steady annual profit. Many are effectively underwriting several years of losses as the entry price for a shot at that promotion cliff, where 2 or 3 levels of progress can transform a perennially loss-making club into a genuinely valuable asset almost overnight. This creates a genuinely dangerous incentive structure, and it's worth understanding clearly, because it's the direct cause of nearly every high-profile lower league financial collapse. If promotion is worth an enormous multiple of relegation tier revenue, some owners are tempted to spend well beyond what the club can sustainably afford, gambling that the payoff from promotion will retroactively justify the overspend. When that gamble doesn't pay off, when the team falls short of promotion in a season where wages were pushed to unsustainable levels chasing it, the club is left carrying a cost structure built for a promotion push with none of the promotion revenue to show for it. This is precisely the mechanism behind football's most common form of financial collapse: entering administration, a formal insolvency process where a club can no longer pay its debts and an independent administrator takes over its finances, often resulting in an automatic points deduction as a football-specific penalty, on top of whatever financial restructuring follows. It isn't usually one single bad decision that causes this. It's a structural pattern: chase promotion by overspending relative to revenue, fall short, carry that overspend into the next season anyway because cutting wages mid-contract isn't simple, and repeat until the gap between costs and income becomes unbridgeable without external rescue. There's a related structural risk that compounds this even further: parachute payments and the cliff going the other direction. When a club gets relegated from a division with significant broadcasting revenue, England's Championship to League One is the clearest example. Some leagues provide parachute payments, a tapering financial cushion designed to help a relegated club adjust its cost base gradually rather than instantly. But that cushion is temporary, shrinking over 2 or 3 years, and clubs that fail to shrink their wage bill in line with the disappearing parachute money often find themselves in exactly the same insolvency spiral, just triggered by falling off the cliff instead of failing to climb it. Some of English football's most storied historic clubs with enormous fan bases and proud histories stretching back over a century, have gone through multiple rounds of administration and near collapse specifically because of this exact pattern, chasing or clinging to a level of football their actual commercial revenue could never sustainably support. There's also a stadium and infrastructure layer to this business that's easy to overlook until it becomes an emergency. Many lower league grounds are old, sometimes over 100 years old, and require significant ongoing capital investment, roof repairs, floodlight upgrades, safety certification renewals, that a club generating modest annual revenue struggles to fund out of operating cash flow. Ground safety certificates in most football pyramids have to be renewed regularly, and failing an inspection can mean reduced stadium capacity or, in serious cases, being unable to host matches at the required level at all, directly threatening the club's ability to compete in its own league. Some owners have addressed this through selling the stadium itself to a property developer or investment vehicle and then leasing it back, freeing up capital but creating a new fixed rental cost that follows the club forward every single season regardless of how results on the pitch are going, and removing what was often the club's single most valuable underlying asset from its own balance sheet in the process. So how does a lower league club actually survive, in plain mechanical terms, when the wages alone routinely exceed total revenue? For most clubs at this level, survival depends on a combination of 4 things happening simultaneously, not any single one of them alone. First, an owner or ownership group willing and financially able to cover the annual operating shortfall, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, as essentially a standing commitment, treated more like a patron's donation than a business investment expecting a normal return. Second, a genuinely productive youth academy or scouting operation capable of periodically producing a transfer fee large enough to offset several years of accumulated losses in one transaction. Third, a fanbase loyal and large enough relative to the club's cost structure to generate meaningful season ticket and matchday revenue even during seasons when results on the pitch are poor, since fair weather attendance evaporating during a bad season is exactly when a club can least afford the revenue drop. And fourth, disciplined wage management that resists the temptation to overspend chasing a single promotion push, even when a rival club in the same division is doing exactly that and appears to be getting away with it that particular season. Now let's put the whole picture together, because there are 2 very different versions of this business, depending on how disciplined the ownership actually is. In the optimistic scenario, you've bought a club with a productive academy pipeline, a genuinely loyal fan base that fills a meaningful share of the stadium even in an average season, and you've kept wage spending disciplined relative to revenue rather than chasing every promotion opportunity at any cost. Under those conditions, a lower league club can operate as a sustainable, modestly loss-making community asset, one where the annual shortfall is small and predictable enough for an owner to comfortably absorb, punctuated every few years by a transfer windfall or a promotion that meaningfully resets the club's financial baseline upward. In the realistic scenario, a few ordinary things go wrong that aren't exotic at all in this business. The team falls just short of promotion in a season where wages were pushed up chasing it. A key academy prospect gets a career-ending injury before a transfer fee ever materializes. A rival club, backed by wealthier ownership, starts outspending the division, forcing an uncomfortable choice between matching that spending or accepting a slide down the table and the attendance drop that comes with it. Under those conditions, that same club can slide from a manageable annual shortfall into a genuine crisis. Wages unpaid, suppliers unpaid, and administration proceedings that can strip points from the current season as punishment on top of the financial damage already done. And, just like every other business built on a fragile structural mechanism rather than a straightforwardly profitable one, none of this shows up to the fans in the stands as a sudden, single dramatic event. It shows up as a slowly worsening pattern, a squad quietly getting weaker each transfer window, a stadium slowly falling further behind on maintenance, until the club that looked, from the terraces, exactly the same as it always had, turns out to have been running on borrowed time for years. So, if you do decide to buy a lower league football club, remember the one thing that actually determines whether it survives long enough to matter. It was never really about how many fans show up on a Saturday. It's about whether you can fund the gap between wages and revenue long enough and be disciplined enough to still be standing the day the youth academy or the promotion push finally pays off.